Spoken label. Spoken label.
I went to sleep that night without knowing it would be the last night I ever spent in that bed at my parents' house in London. Meredith, my mum shook me awake. The room was dark, making it obvious it wasn't morning yet, or not time to get up for school anyway. Mum, I mumbled in my half-asleep state. It's time to go. Everything I told you about those stories is true. It's time for you to leave us so you can train to be a protector. Your dad and I, we've done everything we possibly can to prepare you.
First Charge is the first book in the Destiny Initiative series by Amanda Steele. The book can be purchased in paperback from Amazon. The ebook can also be purchased on Kindle, Kobo, Apple Books, and many others. Spoken Thank you today for tuning in to Spoken Label. Spoken Label was originally set up at the beginning of 2016 and as of recording has over 200 sessions in our archive. Although the podcast can be heard on Anchor, iTunes, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and literally 10 or 11 other networks, the full archive can be found at Spoken Label, and all one word, spokenlabel.bandcamp.com. On Bandcamp, it is set as pay what you want, so you are entitled, if you wish, you can download it or stream it for nothing. But if you want to throw me a couple of pennies my way, it is always eternally grateful to help me maintain the operating costs and future running costs of this podcast. Enjoy. Spoken Label. Hi guys, Andy N, Spoken Label, back in the house on a Friday night. Now, we're on Zoom again today, and we've got a comic turned writer on the other line at the moment, whose name I'd heard of for quite a while now, but I saw him for the first time at the Sunday Assembly a little while back, and he added me on Facebook, and we got talking, and he sent over to his debut book to me, Gormless, and it's one of those sort of books, and I'll let Rich introduce himself properly in a minute. I picked it up, I read out for half the first poem to Amanda, the partner, and she was cracking up like I was, so great choice for a guest today. So we've got Rich Davenport with us. Rich, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody? Tell them who you are, where you come from, and what starts off your creativity, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, Rich Davenport from exotic Bolton originally. Now living in even more exotic Morecombe.
Well, you're Morecombe, and I didn't know that. I knew you were based in Bolton at one point. So how long have you been in Morecombe for?
Oh man, about 15 years now. My wife's from these parts, so I moved up here when we got together. And well, I come from good stock because we used to have a caravan in Morecombe when I was little in the 70s, and we used to come here every year, Riviera of the North. So, yeah. So I have history with this area.
Oh yeah, just slightly, aren't you? So yeah. So now, obviously, I know you've done quite a lot of other stuff. It's not just poetry itself. Like it's I knew of you originally for your stand-up comedy, really. That's why I've heard your name going on for many, many years. So, and I know you've gigged all over the UK. So, obviously, I'm guessing your comedy came way before your comedy poetry, then, really, didn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. I'd done poems at school and stuff, and I'd always been into it all kind of was around a similar time. I used to write lyrics for bands. I still play in a band, and that's all serious stuff. So anything serious or more politically tends to go into that, and then daft stuff. I was a poet of extreme gormlessness. I'd started doing comedy probably in about 1993, just not in any sort of serious way, just dabbling with it. And then I got into it seriously probably in about 2002, now music. And following all that through, I naturally came across John Cooper-Clarke. This was in like 1991. I found a copy of his album Snap, Crackle and Bop. And it just kind of, I thought, well, I wrote poems at school, I'll have a go at writing one. So that was the first time I did it, but I didn't really sort of mention it to anybody. I just had a bit of a dabble at home kind of thing. And then when I got back into comedy, I thought, well, I might just I've always loved sort of performance poetry. Another one early on, which made me sort of even, I always said where John Cooper-Clarke used to gig. I saw Benjamin Zephanaiah. This would be, again, 1991. So a pivotal year.
He's incredible.
And it was amazing. Yeah. And again, it was a mix of political stuff, serious stuff, and really funny stuff as well. To tell you how long ago it was, I bought a single of his, a 12-inch called Free South Africa. So it did the trick.
Wow, that is going back, back a few years.
Yeah, 91 that was. But just the idea, because obviously I played with bands since I've been about 14, but the idea of somebody doing a gig as a poet, this was like, oh, I see. So when I got back into comedy around 2002, I started doing the odd bit of just sticking a poem in at the end kind of thing. And another big inspiration for me was Hovis Presley.
I was going to ask you next about Hovis. I was going to ask you next about Hovis, actually, because when I was a student back in Bolton,
no worries.
Yeah, when I was a student back in Bolton Uni back in the late 2000s, I met Hovis. No, 98 it was. 98 to 2001. I met Hovis Presley and saw him perform about 10 times. So how did you meet Hovis then?
Well, I saw him. I've seen this when John Cooper-Clarke was making his comeback. This was like early 90s, very early 90s. I saw him play a gig in London, and then a couple of years later, he played a place called Hawthorns in Bolton. This was like Christmas '93, and Hovis supported him. I'd never heard of Hovis before that, and I thought he was brilliant. I enjoyed him as much as I enjoyed John Cooper-Clarke, and I bought his book, Poetic Off License. And then years later, I lived in London between 94 and 2002, and when I moved back, I'd started doing comedy, and a mate of mine was just a mutual mate. One of my oldest friends from school was a friend of Hovis, so I got introduced to him, and he's just such a lovely bloke. I mean, I was a little bit in awe because it's bloody Hovis Presley, isn't it? But sorry, language.
No, I've had worse on this podcast. Don't worry about that, mate.
Yeah. But he was just really down to earth, really, really kind, encouraging fellow. And I'd been to the same primary school as him, it turned out. He's about 10 years older than me. And I was, to be honest, I was really nervous about doing any. He put on a lot of local gigs in Bolton. He used to have a regular, I think it was a monthly night. And then he put on lots of charity gigs as well. Now, I've got ME. So he'd got another friend who had it. So he put on these charity gigs for the ME, the local ME support group and things like that. So I ended up gigging with him probably about 10, 11 times. And he kind of encouraged me about the poems, because to be honest, for me, that was like the Beatles going, go on, sing us one of yours then. And you'd be like, no, John, really, no. I'd rather not. But he was really kind, and he encouraged me to do it. And he said back in sort of 2003, you want to do a book? And I was like, well, and he explained to me how he'd done a Poetic Off License, put it all together, and so he was like a Mr. Miyagi to my Daniel son, really. So and then sadly a couple of years later he died.
Big tragedy. Big tragedy.
Out of the blue. Yeah. But yeah, he was amazing. It was amazing to sort of gig with him so often and just let him watch his set. And it was just so encouraging to other comedians. There's loads of people. I'm sure you know yourself, having met him, and you're just such a giving bloke and so encouraging.
Yeah, good bloke. That was pretty.
So the book I've done now.
Yeah, great. Now you've gone into your book Gormless now, haven't you? So, and did you say there was a link between this, wasn't there? Something I seem to recall. And Gormless, and didn't he call you Gormless or something?
No, I've dedicated the book to him. I've always described my poems as poems of extreme gormlessness.
Ah, that was it. I knew that bit. Yeah, I wasn't sure if he called you that or you called it yourself.
Well, no, that on the back of it, because I've had a break from comedy, because what happened was I've got ME and it got worse. It makes me a little bit more horizontal than is really necessary. And I had to take a break because I was semi-pro at one point, and I gigged with some quite well-known comedians who were coming up, and I was like bottom of the bill, and they, when they were sort of top of the bill, if you see what I mean. So I gigged all over the show and I had to take a break. Anyway, there's a local night in Lancaster just up the road called Spotlight, which is a poetry and arts night. And they just support anybody who wants. Yeah, it's really good. So I did that a couple of times. And then there's a place opened in Morecombe called the West End Playhouse, which again, it's run by a performance poet guy called Matt Panish, who you might know.
I know Matt. I know Monkey poet, Monkey Man, yeah. Yeah, I know him, yeah.
Yeah, lovely bloke. So he kind of set this up, and it's not far from where I live, and they do this Morecombe Fringe Festival, comedy festival. So, so I thought I miss doing comedy. I've just done little bits locally, and he said, "Well, why don't you put a show on at the Morecombe Fringe?" So I put something together, and then obviously the lockdown happened. What happened? Basically, I just stuck a video of a poem online on Facebook on World Poetry Day. Or it might be National Poetry Day, the one earlier in the year. And it was when the first lockdown had just started, and people said, like, people seemed to really like it, thankfully. Then when if they were throwing things, I couldn't see because, I'd finished by then. And they said, can you put some more on because it's cheering people up in lockdown? I was like, yeah, all right then. And I'd been working on this book with Minty, the illustrator, for a couple of years, and we were probably going to self-publish it. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I knew a publisher through the comedy scene who's also got ME. And I said to him, look, I've got these poems. I've got an illustrator who's done quite a few illustrations for the book. Don't worry if it's not of any interest, but is that the sort of thing you might put out through your company? And he said, oh, yeah, send us a few samples. And thankfully he liked it. So, he's ended up putting it out for me, which I'm really thankful for. So it's all kind of, I've got really back into it during the lockdown, really, and over the summer during the pandemic, which has been great for me in terms of mental health, just having something to focus on. And I did this Morecombe Fringe Festival online, and the book came out in July, and thankfully people have seem to be enjoying it. So that's the main thing, and it's kind of got me going again. So I'm kind of pushing on from here, really.
Brilliant. Yeah, the book's excellent. Anyone wants to get hold of the book, I recommend you get it, because as I was telling you off night before, Rich, after I got a copy of it in the post, I picked it up. First bit I read it aloud to Amanda stood next to me, and she was cracking up, and I was stood with a smile on my face. It was really, really funny, but really well written as well. So yeah, it's well worth your time. So did you find when you were doing this, getting the book together, did you find that your approach had changed over with your writing, your comedy into your poetry? Because I got a lot of you in the book. I've not seen your live sets, but I can guess what they're going to be like after reading this book.
Yeah, what I try to do is I did this show, which is actually on YouTube. If anyone wants to have a gander at it, just search Rich Davenport Gormless and it'll come up. It's a mix of like one-liners, daft observations, comedy songs, but and then with poems in between. So what tends to happen with I suppose with comedy, I get a daft idea first that is probably too gormless to put into a joke, and then just kind of expand on it from there. And I just try and write jokes that rhyme, really, and daft scenarios, and just see where it goes, really. Sometimes I come up with like the main idea of what the poem's going to be about, the subject, and there's plenty of gags that go off with that. And then other times it's kind of dictated by what rhymes spring to mind. And I do try and pack as many funny bits into the poems as possible, really. Yeah,
and it does. It really shows.
So it does have.
It's really, really good for entertaining book. Now, how did you and your illustrator Minty meet?
Well, there's another funny story. Back in 2003, 2004, I worked in Waterstone's bookshop in Bolton, and so did she. And it turned out we had a really simple.
Yeah. I didn't realise the lady. Sorry,
Oh no, it's no worries. Well, Minty could go either way. It's one of those names, isn't it? You don't know. It's just mint flavoured, but she isn't. Yes. We had this very, very similar sense of humour, and I didn't actually know that she could do that she was artistic like that. It turned out years later we kind of got in touch on Facebook again, and she ran a shop in Norwich near Bolton called Works of Heart, which was like an art shop, and she did art projects in schools and things like that. And she started posting some of her paintings and drawings and things like that. And some of them were cartoons. So I just dropped her a line. I said, look, I've written these gormless poems. I don't suppose you fancy having a go at illustrating them. And we knew we had a similar sense of humour anyway, because it was just constant stupidity when we were working together. And I just love her style of artwork. It really brings the poems to life. So she came up with a few ideas, and it was like, yes, you've completely taken what's in me and made it real on the page. Thank you. So she's done an incredible job, and like you say, it adds so much to it. I think it's as much part of the impact of the book as the poems themselves for me, and it's just brilliant seeing what she'll come up with and how she'll put across what I've tried to put across in the poem, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Obviously, like, if people are wondering, like, you've got a bull on the front cover. So I think it's a bull, isn't it? Snorting out. That is hinting like you're subtle as a bull, isn't it?
It's actually a gnu.
Oh, it's a canoe, right? No, that's another copy.
It does look like a bull. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Gnu and bull confusion it afflicts a lot of us. I had to learn the difference very, very slowly with flashcards. So, yeah, no, it is in fact a gnu, because we give our joint shenanigans the name Blue Gnu Scribblings.
Ah, right. I was wondering where that came from. Right. Brilliant. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you got any gigs lined up for this at the moment to support the book, and what plans have you got going forward at the moment now?
I'm trying to book stuff for after the pandemic. I'm still isolating at the minute for various health-related humorous jollity things. But yeah, I'm trying to start gigging. The Morecombe Fringe have asked me back next year to do it live, which was the intention last year, but it got put on. So I'm going to go back there and do that again. We're working on a second book at the moment, Minty and myself. And also a few people have asked me, was I planning to record any of the poems? And I mean, I did do a comedy album back in 2003. I've still got a cupboard full of them now, but it was one of them.
That's the story of another day. That
about 30 people watched. Yeah, wow. Yeah. So people said, like, are you planning to record some of these? And I used to do a radio show on a rock station, and the guy that runs the station, he got in touch and said, have you thought of, just doing some sort? He said, the book's fine, but have you thought about doing something with actually performing them? So a few people had asked. So I put a thing just very, very tentatively on Facebook the other week, just with people who've liked the poems. I said, would anybody be interested if I put something together with just maybe a CD of like as many poems as I can cram on, with a few daft comedy songs and some sketches, and people thankfully seem to be interested. So I'm going to start work on that hopefully in the next month or so. I mean, it's pretty much, I've got enough poems to do it with. I just need to sort of write a couple of more bits to go with it. So hopefully next year, both of those things will be happening. And then I'm looking to sort of get gigging as soon as I can, really, as soon as it's all, the sort of restrictions are lifted and live shows are happening again. I really want to get out again and just gig wherever I can, really, next year. Yeah,
I can't blame you. I suspect when lockdown restrictions get lifted, it's going to be absolutely mental, this our live scene, because like you've had people like, I'm a performing poet, and it's going to be like, we've all been shut in for 9 months, haven't we? So everyone's going to be out kicking here, there, and everywhere first chance they can, basically, for that one. So yeah, I agree with you completely on that. Now, I was going to ask you as well then, obviously, I know you've gigged all over the UK. What's the most unusual gig you've done so far then? Is there any sticks in your brain?
Unusual. Yes. There used to be a bistro in Lee near Wigan. No, it was in Wigan. Hang on a minute. I'm getting. I know it was in Wigan. I'm sure it was in Wigan. Run by a guy called Rufus, who I can't remember how I got introduced to him. It was through another stand-up comedian, and he used to put on a comedy night every month. This guy Rufus. It was like a converted terraced house. Really posh food and all that. I'm surprised they let me in, But, and he would just have people at the front from the comedy circuit. He'd have 3 or 4 acts on, like a proper comedy night, while people are sat there eating the tea, So it was like, that was surreal. And Hovis did it a couple of times, and some of the jokes people, because it was like what you get in a proper comedy club. So it was sort of occasionally, I don't know whether we're going to put people off the meal, some of what people were coming out with, but it was that was a bit surreal. People are sat there eating the steak and chips, whatever, and you'd say, hey, how about them poo gags? It's a bit that was a bit weird. Yeah.
Oh god, yeah, completely. I can well imagine it over years. Like you've probably covered all kinds of venues, haven't you? So like some, like all comedy, some nights been better than others probably as well. So what's the furthest you've travelled then, comedy and gigs wise?
I mean, I did gigs in London when I lived down there, a couple. years and years ago, we're going back to about 1996.
Wow.
Stephen came, gave me my first open spot at a place in New Malden called the Big Fish Comedy Club. And then when I moved back up to Bolton, I went down to London again to gig from Bolton, if you see what I mean. So that was quite a long round trip. And then I've gone up to the northeast from the northwest, which is quite a circuitous route. And I gigged a bit in Scotland when I lived up there for a while as well. And that was back in the sort of early 90s when I was first sort of dabbling with comedy. So I've gigged up there a little bit as well. So wherever they'll have me, really.
Oh, yeah, it's understandable. Have you found then over time, obviously, you've gigged in quite a lot of different areas. Have you found that senses, I'll get the words right here. Have you found like each night's been very different if you go to other areas? Like what may really work in one area doesn't always work in others, do you find?
The main thing I found with that was when I first started out, well, when I got back, but sort of around 2002, I used to do quite a lot of stuff like, there's a lot of northern stuff in what I do anyway, but it was a bit more, probably a lot more when I first started out, and the references didn't always work in other areas. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. So I made it a bit broader in terms of, and it's just experience that sort of you kind of learn things like that by dying on your ass horribly, really. And what I don't know what I found is the type of venue really more than the area. I think places like Jongleurs and Comedy Store and things like that, and no disrespect to places like that, they're a lot more mainstream, and my stuff's just daft. And I think what I've found is that people's taste in comedy can be as different as the taste in music. Again, a very painful lesson. So in some places, stuff that's gone down well one night has just been complete tumbleweed city the next night. More dictated by the sort of the type of night it is, whether it's, I've not explained this very well, am I? Some places you're kind of on in the background as a comedian because it's a works night out or a hen do or a stag night, and they go for a much more mainstream style of humor, which is brilliant for comedians who do that. There's a lot of people who do it brilliantly well. I'm not one of them. So it was more kind of figuring that out. And then there's nights that are more what we used to, in old days, we used to call it alternative comedy, Perhaps a little people, whereas if it's more known as being a comedy night where people go to see comedians, if that makes sense, places like XS Malarkey in Manchester, places where you get regular circuit comedians, not just people going for a night out once a year, and you know what I mean, like. Then with places like that, people seem to be a lot more savvy about different styles of comedy, a lot more open to it, and a lot more willing to give you a chance. Whereas if it's in a more mainstream venue, so I would say more of that the kind of night it is more than the location.
Yeah, of course. Sense. No, that's clear. I agree. I get completely with that. So, right, a couple of quick things to finish off with here, because I want to backtrack because something I wanted to ask you before as well. I was on your forthcoming second book, which obviously hopefully be out next year. How does it compare to the first book? Is it quite different, or is it similar-ish? Do you think?
Similar sort of stuff, really. I try and write as much as I can. It's not always as often as I'd like with work commitments and things like that, but I do try and keep going so that I'm not caught short, and I don't mean that in a kind of laboratorial sense, although there are special trousers you can wear and it helps, but no, I try and keep writing so that I don't run out of stuff, basically, and so that any that come up that aren't very good, because not everything you write is usable, and so I try and write as much as I can, I'm kind of so that I've got more than I need, if you see what I mean, and so that I can weed out the crap, basically, which is a long process. And then, so the second one, it kind of goes on in a similar vein. I'm trying not to repeat myself. I mean, there's a lot of poo humour in there, let's be honest. And that's an ongoing theme, although I don't really like eggs. So that's carrying on. So yeah, it's probably just as daft. But I think someone mentioned that there weren't very many long poems in the first book. So I've tried to do more of an epic, which is called there's one's called Dracula's Ethical Pig Farm. Which is
great
quite a long one.
Great title.
Thank you. So that's in there, and I just try and keep the ideas fresh and not repeat myself. But hopefully, it's similar. If people have enjoyed the first one, hopefully they'll like this. And I am testing some of the poems out on. People asking me to do these videos, thankfully. So I was doing. I did pretty much everything from the first book. I put one up every week on my Facebook page, and I'm trying out some of the ones from the forthcoming book as well, and ones I write as I go along, kind of thing. So yeah, it's going to be similar style of humour, possibly, hopefully, without repeating too much of the subject matter.
Yeah, no, best way. I agree. I look forward to it. Now, if people want to find out more about you, Rich, where are the best going?
Facebook page is a good one. It's just facebook.com/rich.davenport1. And if anyone's interested in the book, and I'm donating a percentage from every copy of the book to the ME Association, so that's available from www.chinbeardbooks.com. Chin as in thing on the front of your face, beard as in the hairy thing thereupon. Chinbeardbooks.com.
Brilliant. Yeah, I can see that in the back of the book, so I'll make a note of that later. Great stuff. Okie dokie. Right, that's all my questions today, Rich. So we're going to let you take a quick break, and we're going to let you do a few poems for us then, if you're okay with that.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
It's been brilliant. It's been great fun to have. Loved it. So hang around, everybody. Believe me, this guy's a genius. You'll love him. See you in a few minutes. Take care. Spoken, mate. Hi, guys. Straight over to Rich. This is brilliant. I'm looking forward to this. Over to you, buddy.
Thank you. This one is called, the first poem I'm going to read is based on the old Northern swear expression, bloody Nora. Bloody Nora, which to me sounds like an old lady who's become a serial killer. And I've combined that with the idea of, do you remember the knit nurse at school, Knitting Nora the Bug Explorer?
Oh, yeah, I do. I do remember that, yeah.
Yeah, well, I put those together, and this is the Ballad of Bloody Nora. Nasty notions nag within the noggin of old knit nurse Nora. After 50 years of scalp surveillance, she could stand no more. Her sanity was slowly stolen by insomnia. Her husband was a snorer. Criminally insane would be the best description for her. For decades, the kid's knit discomfort really got a goat. But now the goat's been sacrificed. She's flipped and slit its throat. She doesn't blame the children. Gives discreet shampoo no shame. It's crystal clear in Nora's eyes the parents are to blame. With her meat cleaver in hand, she now begins her killing spree. You filthy gits have all got nits as far as I can see. See her bulging egg-eyed glare. She's deadly as a rabid stoat. Nora's knit cure is simple. Cuts your hair off at the throat. Her rampage knows no limits as she tears across the nation. Septuagenarian serial killer seeks to spread decapitation. From town to town she travels in her mobile home at Torah. She's still at large. Pray you don't face the blade of bloody Nora.
Fantastic. Everyone's wondering, you've got Amanda sat in the background. Say hello, Amanda.
Hello.
She wants to hear this one after reading the book.
No.
That's fantastic, that, mate. Great start. Did you find out when you wrote that piece, was it quite easy to write that one, or did it kind of tell itself quite over a bit of time to you?
It did. It just sort of came out, really, yeah. It tends to happen that if
Sorry, mate, go on.
It just kind of all spiraled out, really, better out than in, and there it was. Yeah, I just got the idea, and an empty house is better than a bad tenant, and there it was. Yes.
Brilliant. Okay, should jump into your second one, mate? What's your second one going to be now?
Right. Well, this next one it's basically inspired. I'm in my 40s now, so even my wife thinks I'm old. For my last birthday, she got me an aftershave called Old Spouse, and this based on the people I think are the best model of growing old are the Rolling Stones, and obviously healthy eating is important for staying healthy. So I've combined the two there. This is inspired by Rolling Stones' song title. It's called "It's Only Rock and Roughage, But I Like It." Now, after much in-depth analysis, it would appear to me that cabbage is the Keith Richards of the lettuce family. To support this theory further, eat them both. Note your reaction. Lettuce alone won't fill you up, but cabbage gives you satisfaction. Lettuce is light and sprightly, while cabbage seems to stagger. That's because cabbage is Keith Richards, and lettuce is Mick Jagger.
You left me speechless there, mate, on that one.
Oh, okay.
Brilliant, absolutely superb, sublime that one, mate. So I take it, are you actually a fan of the Rolling Stones?
Yes. I kind of grew up on the Beatles and the Stones as a kid, and I do like them. Yeah.
Yeah, you can check. I got the love on that one straight away. Then, so brilliant stuff. Great stuff. That. Okay, mate. We agreed on 5, didn't we? So because you're that talented, do you want to give us a third one, mate?
Okay. This next one, it was a new word on me, but it's actually an old word. It's hochmagandi, which is an old, excuse me, an oldie worldy word for sex used by the poet Rabbie Burns. It's a Scottish word, so if you shout hochmagandi in a Scottish accent every so often, that helps. So you've heard of 50 Shades of Grey. This is called 7 Shades of hochmagandi. One baby, join me by the fireside, dear. Let's have a glass of brandy. And if the fancy takes you, there'll be time for hochmagandi. Number 2, there's life in the old dog yet. I'm 93 years old, and though my legs are bowed and bandy, with Viagra and a splint, I can still manage hochmagandi. Number 3, one sniff of the barmaid's apron. I cannot take my drink. I'm off my tits on half a shandy. It gives me brewer's droop, leaves me incapable of hochmagandi. Number 4, in every nook and cranny, if you get married on a nudist beach, you'll get all sandy. You'd better have a shower before attempting hochmagandi. Number 5, that Manilow magic. Barry Manilow sang songs about ladies with names like Mandy. Mandy was nice, but as for that woman in his 1981 hit single Bermuda Triangle, oh, she was wrong, and she buggered off with another man right in front of poor Barry and broke his heart, and all because she couldn't control her insatiable desire for hochmagandi. Number 6, Morgan Freeman was a chauffeur for Miss Daisy Jessica Tandy. She didn't pay his wage in cash, she paid in hochmagandi. Number 7, you'll have to get out of the habit. I've been a celibate monk for 50 years, but I'm still randy. Oh, bollocks to the monastery. It's time for hochmagandi. Now, one final word of warning. Chastity is fine and dandy, but the human race would be extinct if not for hochmagandi.
Superb. Oh, brilliant, that one, mate. Oh, well, the thing is, the fun I'm worried about that is that you actually know Barry Manilow songs there in the Triangle.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic, mate. Oh, God, absolutely, really enjoying this tonight. Okay, we're doing the 4th one now, aren't we?
We are. Well, this is a short one. It's basically it's a haiku, which we were taught about at school, and it wasn't a posh school. It was rough as a bird's ass. It was a school in Bolton called Dean School, which people say, "What did you leave school with?" And I said, "All my teeth." You know, that kind of. But anyway, they taught us about haikus. Some people just run off, and there were riots, all kinds of things. You know, that was education. It's an education in itself, really. But so they taught us about haikus, really, which I thought it's a traditional Japanese form of poetry consisting of 3 lines in the first verse. No, sorry. It's 3 lines, 5 syllables in the first line, 7 in the second, and then 5 syllables again in the third line. And some poets are moved by the challenge of expressing something of great profundity within the minimalist aesthetic of the haiku form. And then there are silly buggers like me who use it for poo jokes. So this is called fast poo haiku. Unexpected squits. Screaming swimmers flee the pool. They fear my brown shame.
I've not heard a haiku like that before. Now, Amanda, you write haiku like I do. Sat next to me. Have you ever heard a haiku like that? No. Amanda's just shaking her head. I know she'd never heard one like that before as well. Brilliant, mate. Okay, we're on to the big finale now, won't we, mate?
I'm torn between two, Stripey Elf or 3 Meals with Roger.
Amanda?
Stripey Elf.
Would you like
Amanda's asking for
very
Stripey Elf.
surreal or rude?
Stripey Elf.
Okay,
Amanda's asking for Stripey Elf, so.
no problem. Here we go. This is probably one of my favourites, this one. Tug not the beard of Stripey Elf, lest he become aggrieved. The guests in all their finery shall not be well received. The matador with roses clenched, his buttock cheeks betwixt, Fandango's to Aunt Maud and says, "All right, love, how you fixed?" They toot upon their pipes of clay, the smoke doth rise in wisps. Aunt Maud lifts up a bowl and screams, "Which crisps? My darling Maud," the matador exclaims, "have you forgot? You ate the crisps yourself to celebrate the yak you shot." Says Maud, "Well, I'll be back at yes, the yak who stole my car." And then they laugh, 6 laughs of laughter each. Ha ha, ha 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 ha.
Fantastic. Brilliant stuff today, Rich. I know Amanda's in the background like I am. We both absolutely really enjoyed that. So everybody, make sure you check out his book, Almost Details Before. There's loads more in there like that. It's brilliant. So thank you today, Rich. It's been a pleasure. Real pleasure.
Thank you, guys. Pleasure for me too. Thanks so much for having me on the show. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Hang around, mate. I need to put Urge off mic. This is Andy N. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. And as Don Callis says, stay on. Spoken, mate.